What's up guys and welcome. You are watching Fazi Fitness. So guys, channel membership is now live. Link is in the description and the first comment. Do check it out. That would really help support the channel. So let's start this video with the most recent update from the mutant Nick Walker. So looking very impressive for 285 pounds. And seeing him doing those dips while being that heavy with that textbook form, that is so damn impressive. So this has been Nick's story all throughout these years. He trains very slow in a very controlled fashion, and this has been very effective for him. Now for those of you guys who do not know, Nick competed somewhere in the 260s at this past Pittsburgh Pro and the New York Pro. And we have to keep in mind, he almost took out the reigning Arnold champion and a former Mr. Olympia Derek Lunsford. So that was the new standard that Nick Walker set this year, and that is the one to beat for this upcoming Mr. Olympia. And right now in this video, the man is weighing in the 280s and he has been staying very lean throughout this post-show phase, which is eventually gonna translate into the prep phase, and that in turn will help him bring more muscle, a bigger frame at this upcoming Mr. Olympia. Now some legends of the past, like Lee Haney, they clearly do not want someone like the mutant to become Mr. Olympia, to become the biggest ambassador of the sport and represent bodybuilding. And the main reason for that these guys give is that Nick isn't a very aesthetic bodybuilder. He isn't what we call a pretty physique. But the fact is, you cannot deny that Nick brings a lot of muscle to the stage. He's one of the freakiest bodybuilder out there. He has that amazing stage presence. And we have to keep in mind, his waist as well as his quads, they look the best ever at this past Pittsburgh Pro and the New York Pro. So the aim is to come in a few pounds heavier for this upcoming Mr. Olympia and be very formidable. But at the same time, he wants to bring an even tighter midsection. Now some critics out there say that Nick doesn't need any more muscle. He doesn't need more size. But in my opinion, the results of this year's Pittsburgh Pro, they say otherwise. The more muscle Nick has, the more advantage he's gonna have over his competition like Derek, Hardy, Martin, and Andrew Jack, because he isn't beating any of those top guys in terms of aesthetics and the shape. So top 3 is the goal. Let me know what you guys think.
Last couple weeks, I feel like my body's like changing really fast. It's crazy. I'm growing and getting leaner and getting stronger all at the same time.
Next up, we have an update from the reigning Arnold champion and the former Mr. Olympia champion Derek Lunsford. So people do not give Derek enough credit on how much improvements he has been able to make ever since he switched over into the men's open bodybuilding. And that was back in 2022, especially in his chest and in his delts, because these two were the main area of focus that people talked about a lot, that he doesn't have enough definition and enough muscle in there. Now he will never have these striations across his chest like Hadi Chopin does. Actually no one can. But if we compare Derek's most muscular shot from 2022 versus this year, he did add a good amount of muscle, making his chest look a lot fuller and his delts a lot bigger and more rounder, which added to his width and enhanced his X-frame even more. So Derek is just under 14 weeks out in his most recent YouTube video, and the man looks pretty damn impressive, to be very honest. The fact that he stayed so freaking lean because he had to compete multiple times. The first show was the Arnold, and then 10 weeks later, it was the Pittsburgh Pro. And that will allow him to utilize these next 4 weeks to add more muscle, more tissue, but at the same time, get leaner and also start bringing out the detail. And then he's gonna drop the hammer to start the prep for this year's Mr. Olympia. And this is something we also saw from Derek during his prep for this past Arnold. I mean, the way he was looking at 4 weeks out, a whole lot of people out there were under the impression that Derek might not even be ready for this past Arnold. He might not show up in shape, but the man showed up like a champ, and he redeemed himself big time by beating the reigning Olympia champion Samson Dauda. And I have got to say, by this time, if you do not consider Derek one of the favorites to win this year's Olympia, then some reconsideration is definitely in order. The judges absolutely love what he brings every single time on the stage, and a less than 100% Derek beating the best ever mutant at this past Pittsburgh Pro. That is a proof that Derek is gonna be a top contender to win this year's Olympia title. So Hassan Mustafa checks in at 320 pounds, making him one of the heaviest guys in the men's open bodybuilding right now. And that is a great condition to be in, especially at such a heavy body weight, and more specifically for someone like Hassan, because conditioning is something that has always been a major issue for him, because the lack of muscularity or size, that has never been a problem for Hassan. It has always been the same story. He doesn't bring that next level of conditioning. He doesn't come in shape. Now, in some of the shows that he did back in 2023, for instance Toronto Pro, he gave Ian Valier a serious run for his money. And to this day, that along with Tampa Pro 2019, they were some of the best looks of his entire pro career, because he has a decent combination of everything: size, conditioning and fullness. While back in 2022, he brought the best conditioning of his career, but that was at the expense of a bit of size. Now that Tampa Pro look back in 2019, that was totally different, since he had very young muscle back then, but at the same time, he had more of an aesthetic look, more of a streamlined physique, and I'm gonna say the continuous chase for more size, more muscle, that kind of ruined his waistline big time. And now Hassan has to rely heavily on being the guy with the most amount of muscle on the stage in order to win all these shows. Now he is one of the biggest guys out there, but the fact is, at the same time, he has to bring the condition. He has to come and shred it. Now, if we look back in time, Hassan Mustafa was on that same stage as the Mutant back in 2021 New York Pro. And just like Nick, he's also a big mass monster. But he just wasn't able to bring the consistency when it comes to peaking for all of these shows. Now, one thing is certain. This is the biggest and the leanest Hassan has ever looked. So hopefully this is gonna translate on the stage. And let's just hope that we get to see him on the stage, maybe later this year. To all the people out there who keep on commenting under Mike Sommerfeld's post that he should compete in the 212 or in the men's open bodybuilding, well, here is just a glimpse of how much muscle and density a potential top 6 men's open guy has over a top tier classic physique guy who is most likely gonna win this year's classic physique Olympia title. So Mike Sommerfeld and Behrouz, they not only train together, they also hit some shots for the camera, as both of these guys are prepping for this upcoming Mr. Olympia. And we're gonna get to see that footage very soon on their YouTube channels. But since Behrouz, he just competed like a couple of weeks back, and Mike was in the detox phase up until a couple of weeks back, when he finally started the prep for this upcoming Mr. Olympia. But still, the man looks pretty damn impressive next to someone like Behrouz, and the potential for Mike as an open bodybuilding pro, that is certainly there, that is high, if he wishes to grow into that division, because Mike has already got a tons of muscle, and he has got that amazing frame. But this also goes to show you the massive difference between classic and the men's open. Now, can we all agree that there is currently nobody in that entire classic physique division who is more heavily muscled than Mike Sommerfeld? No one has more density and more thickness than Mike. But even then, he doesn't even come close to the level of the density of a top-tier open bodybuilder. Next up, we have an off-season physique update from James Hollingshead. So we are now around 13 weeks out of this year's Mr. Olympia. And at this point, it is highly unlikely that James will jump into a show prior to that. He's growing as well as enjoying his training, which is what matters the most to him. So a few years back, James was able to win shows, and interestingly, his physique has gotten bigger and better over time. But the fact is the competition also got better and tougher with every passing year. And that kind of explains him not placing top 2 at this past Detroit Pro show. Maybe it was his placing at the Arnold and Detroit that allowed him to change his mind in terms of his competition schedule for this year. Because originally, he was supposed to do the Pittsburgh Pro 2 and maybe Dubai Pro 2. But honestly, just like the Arnold, Ohio, the Pittsburgh Pro lineup, that was way too good for someone like James Hollingshead to crack top 5. So the look that he brought at this past Detroit Pro, James was one of his all-time best at that show. And if he only had better midsection, better abs, he could have pushed Azan Hirati for that second place spot. But that being said, there are still some opportunities for James Hollingshead to win some shows if he goes for something like Italy Pro or France Pro, which are scheduled a couple of weeks before the Olympia this year. So at this point, I must say a good strategy that is something that is missing from James Hollingshead, especially when it comes to selecting all these shows. So hit the thumbs up button if you like the video and smash the subscribe button if you wanna come back for more. Thanks for watching.